You know, I once sat down with a young man who told me, "Jim, I want to make a lot of money." I said, "That's nice, but a lot of money is not a number." Let me tell you something I learned a long time ago. Vague goals lead to vague results. Life doesn't respond to hope. It responds to clear intention followed by disciplined action. You don't get rich by wishing. You've got to decide what you want with precision. Not someday, not when it's convenient, but today. So today I want to talk to you about how to think clearly, plan wisely, and live deliberately so money becomes a servant, not a master. Let's begin. Now, let me tell you, clarity is the beginning of all progress. And clarity begins with writing. If you want a better financial future, don't just hope for it. Write it. Not vaguely, not, "I want more money." Number, be precise. I want to earn $10,000 a month through my business. I want to own a debt-free home by 45. I want to invest 15% of my income starting this year. When you write it, you make it real. You give your mind a target. And once the target is fixed, something incredible happens. The mind begins working toward it consciously and unconsciously. It's one thing to think about success, but writing it down, that's a whole new level of commitment. I've found over and over again that what people don't write, they rarely achieve. If your vision is stuck in your head, it will compete with doubts, distractions, and daily demands. But if it's on paper, it becomes a mirror, a standard to measure your actions against. You see, the act of writing is not just for memory, it's for alignment. You begin to ask, are my habits, my spending, my daily choices, are they in harmony with the picture I've put down in writing? I remember writing down, I will become financially independent. Not, I hope, not maybe someday. I wrote it down like a contract with my future. And once it was written, I began working backwards. I asked, what skills will get me there? Who must I become? What kind of decisions must I consistently make to arrive at that future? That's what vision does. It pulls you out of the fog. It makes the invisible visible and the impossible inevitable. You'd be surprised how few people can answer the question, what do you want to become by 30, by 40, by 60? Most people have vague hopes. They want to be comfortable. They want to do better or have more. But the problem is, comfort isn't a plan. More isn't a number. Better isn't measurable. That's why people drift, because there's no anchor. But when you write down, by age 35, I want to have $100,000 invested, own a business that generates $8,000 per month, and live in a paid-off home in Austin, Texas. Now you have something to build. Now you can ask, what business models can get me there? Who's done it before? What are the steps? Writing the vision is more than just goal setting. It's an act of belief. It says to the world, and more importantly to yourself, I am not here to wander. I am here to create. You go from consumer to producer. You stop waiting for a break and begin creating your own opportunities. And here's what else I've learned. Life responds to clarity. When you are clear, doors open, people appear, ideas flow. When you are vague, you repel success, because success doesn't follow confusion. But be careful, writing the vision requires honesty. You must dare to write what you truly want, not what others expect of you. Don't shrink your dreams to fit your current circumstances. Expand your vision to fit your potential. Dream in detail. Don't say, I want to help people. Say, I want to build a mentorship platform for young entrepreneurs that earns $250,000 a year and impacts 10,000 lives. That's vision. That's fuel. So get quiet. Get a journal. Sit with yourself. Ask, what do I really want to build? Describe it like you're writing a movie script about your own life. And once it's written, revisit it often. Let it guide you. Let it challenge your excuses. Let it refine your habits. Because once you write the vision and make it plain, life begins to organize itself around your clarity. Write it, review it, and begin to build it. That's where the journey begins. I've always believed that the tragedy of life isn't that we don't have enough time. The real tragedy is that we waste so much of it on things that don't matter. Too many people major in minor things. They get busy, but not productive. They confuse motion with progress, but let me tell you, activity is not achievement. You can run east looking for a sunset, but you'll never find it. Why? Because the direction is wrong. And if your direction is wrong, no amount of effort will make it right. The key is clarity, the kind of clarity that helps you separate the essential from the optional, the vital few from the trivial many. I remember early in my journey, I was doing 10 different things a day, all with great energy, but little return. And then someone shared with me a simple concept that changed everything, the 80-20th rule. They said, 80% of your results are coming from 20% of your efforts. Find that 20% and double down on it. That was a wake-up call. I had to pause and ask, what am I doing that really moves the needle? Not what keeps me busy, not what makes me feel accomplished, but what actually gets results. Let me give you an example. I used to spend hours each week going to meetings that didn't lead anywhere. Lots of talk, little traction. But the 2 or 3 hours I spent prospecting new clients, reading a good book, or developing a skill, that's what moved my income, my mindset, and my opportunities forward. When I got clear on that, I made a shift. I stopped showing up everywhere I was invited and started showing up only where I could grow, contribute, or earn. We live in a noisy world. There are more distractions now than ever before. Emails, texts, scrolling through endless feeds, running errands that don't matter, talking about politics with people who won't change these things, eat your day, your energy, and your destiny. And they feel like something. That's the trap. They feel like you're engaged. But remember, engagement without effectiveness is just exhaustion. What you need is the discipline to prune the distractions and focus on what counts. Here's something practical I started doing, and it made a massive difference. Every week, I would list everything I did that week. Then I'd ask, which of these gave me the most return, financially, emotionally, spiritually? I circled the top 3. That became my major. And I began organizing my calendar around those things. If a task didn't contribute to them, I asked myself why I was doing it at all. The goal isn't to do more, it's to do more of what matters. You can tell the difference between wealthy thinkers and struggling ones by how they spend their hours. The struggling mind is reactive, chasing fires, answering every notification, doing what's urgent. The wealthy mind is proactive, building systems, planting seeds, investing in activities that yield compound returns. They don't chase everything, they choose carefully. They guard their time like treasure because they know that time, once spent, doesn't return. Clarity allows you to say no, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. When you're clear on your vision, you don't need to entertain every opportunity, every request, or every distraction. You stop trying to please everyone and start trying to serve your purpose. And that's when results start to show up because now your energy is focused like a laser, not scattered like a flashlight. So if you find yourself exhausted, ask this simple question. Am I majoring in minor things? And then take inventory. What are the 20% of things that give you 80% of your results? Once you know them, protect them, double them, build your calendar around them, because that's how you turn a busy life into a productive one and a productive life into a wealthy one. Don't just be active, be effective. That's how you build a life that compounds with purpose. I used to meet people all the time who said, I hate my job, or I'm just waiting for Friday. And I'd think, that's a tough way to live, not just for a week or a month, but for years. What's missing in their lives isn't talent, and it isn't opportunity. What's missing is purpose. See, when your work is just a paycheck, you'll do the bare minimum. But when your work is tied to purpose, when it's connected to something bigger than bills, you bring your best self to the table. That shift in mindset is what turns labor into wealth. Purpose does something extraordinary. It transforms your attitude toward your daily efforts. Suddenly, it's not just a job, it's your contribution. You're no longer clocking hours, you're building value. And value, my friends, is what wealth always follows. I remember when I was just getting started selling and teaching and trying to get ahead, it was tough. But what kept me going wasn't the promise of a bigger paycheck. It was the feeling that I was building something that mattered to myself, to others, to the world I lived in. That sense of meaning gave my days fuel. Now here's the reality. People without purpose burn out. They can't sustain the grind. They complain more, quit easier, blame faster. But people with purpose, they burn bright. They wake up earlier. They stay later. They get knocked down and come back stronger. They don't need outside motivation every morning because something on the inside is driving them. When you know why you do what you do, discipline becomes natural. You don't have to force effort when passion is present. Let me give you a simple example. I once knew a young man who worked in a shipping warehouse. Not exactly the dream job, right? But he had a different approach. He wasn't just moving boxes, he was saving up to start a small business. He read on his breaks, saved half his pay, took night classes. That job wasn't a dead end for him, it was a stepping stone. Because his work had a purpose. And sure enough, 2 years later, he launched a successful logistics company, same warehouse, different mindset. Purpose turns frustration into fuel. It turns setbacks into strategy. I've always believed that when you attach your actions to a compelling reason, it sharpens your focus. It filters your distractions. It builds consistency. You don't get rich by doing random things when you feel like it. You build wealth by doing meaningful things, whether you feel like it or not. And purpose is the reason you show up even when it's hard. When your work is aligned with your purpose, even failure becomes instructive instead of defeating. You don't quit after a bad day because your goal isn't short-term applause, it's long-term progress. The paycheck becomes a byproduct of impact. And when impact grows, income follows. I often say, the purpose of life is a life of purpose. That's true for wealth, too. If you want money to stick, to grow, to multiply, it needs to be earned through something meaningful. People can feel when you're authentic. Customers can sense when you care. Partners notice when you go the extra mile, not just for profit, but because you believe in what you're doing. So how do you tie your work to purpose? You start by asking the bigger question, what kind of life do I want to build? Not just, how can I survive? But, how can I contribute? Then ask, what am I uniquely good at? And, who benefits when I show up at my best? That's your intersection. When your natural abilities meet the needs of others, and your work supports that mission, now you're on purpose. And here's what's beautiful. Purpose doesn't just make you wealthier financially. It makes you wealthier emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It gives your journey meaning. And money that comes from meaning is never wasted. It's invested in better choices, in better people, in a better life. So remember, if you're feeling stuck in your work, don't just look for a new job, look for a deeper reason. Because when purpose enters the room, everything changes. That's when work becomes wealth. I've always said that vague goals produce vague results, and that's especially true when it comes to money. One of the biggest mistakes people make on the road to wealth is thinking in generalities. They say things like, I just want to be rich, or I want to make more money this year. But tell me, how do you build something you can't define? How do you chase something you haven't identified? That's like getting in your car and saying, let's go somewhere, but never entering an address into the map. You'll burn a lot of gas and time, but you won't get anywhere meaningful. If you truly want to attract wealth, you must give your financial goals shape, detail, and direction. Don't say, I want to earn more. Say, I will earn $100,000 this year using my graphic design business, working with 10 consistent clients, delivering premium value with a signature product line. That's a financial blueprint. That's clarity. That's a plan the mind can wrap around and the body can execute. When you get that specific, something powerful happens. Your brain begins to work toward the exact coordinates, like a guided missile locked onto a target. I remember the moment I made this shift. In my early years, I used to say, I just want to be successful, but nothing happened. No traction, no energy, just a big cloud of hopes. Then one day I sat down, got a clean sheet of paper and wrote, this year, I will earn $50,000 in commission by giving 200 presentations, selling an average of X units per client, and improving my follow-up system. Suddenly it wasn't wishful thinking anymore, it was engineering. I had numbers to hit, ratios to improve, levers to pull. It gave me clarity, and with clarity came progress. This is the secret many never learn. Numbers create discipline. Precision builds momentum. When you write down an exact figure, your work becomes accountable. You can track it, test it, tweak it, but when your goals are hazy, how do you know if you're winning or drifting? You don't. And when you don't know, you quit faster. Clarity sustains action. Specificity sustains belief. I've coached a lot of people who said, my goal is to be debt-free. That's noble. But then I ask, how much do you owe? What's your monthly plan to eliminate it? What will you cut or create to accelerate the process? Most of the time, they haven't answered those questions. So I get them to write it out. I owe $18,000. I will pay off $1,500 per month by reducing discretionary spending and increasing my freelance work. Now, the goal has teeth. It has steps. It can be measured and completed. Even in relationships, business, health, the principle is the same. Clarity creates focus, and focus creates results. Don't say you want to eat healthier. Say you'll cut sugar by 50% and eat vegetables in 2 meals per day. Don't say you want a better business. Say you'll close 5 new clients each month by improving outreach scripts and referral follow-up. That's how you bring your vision into reality, one clear target at a time. And don't be afraid to stretch the numbers. A specific goal doesn't mean a safe one. Write the number that excites you, that scares you just a little, that demands you become a better version of yourself. But make it real. Make it exact. The subconscious mind can't aim at fog. It needs a point of focus, a figure, a strategy, a deadline. So, I'll ask you right now, what's your income goal this year? How will you earn it? What will you sell, build, serve, or solve? Don't leave the answer in your head. Write it down. Numbers on paper are dreams with structure. They become goals with legs. And goals with legs start walking toward you the moment you define them. If you want money to follow you, give it a map. Give it clarity. Give it direction. I've learned over the years that when people struggle with action, it's not because they lack ability, it's because they lack clarity of purpose. The moment you know why you're doing something, everything else begins to sort itself out. I've seen it time and again. When your why is big enough, the how starts to appear. Not all at once, and not perfectly, but clearly enough to take the next step. And then the next one. That's how the journey builds. But if your reason is weak, every obstacle feels heavy, and every detour feels like the end. Let me take you back to a time when I didn't have much. I was broke, behind on bills, driving a beat-up car, and living in a small apartment that was barely holding together. Now, don't get me wrong, plenty of people have been through worse, but I knew I was capable of more. I just didn't have a strong reason to change. Not until I saw my mentor's lifestyle, the impact he was making, the books on his shelf, the peace he walked with. I remember thinking, I want that. But even more than that, I wanted to become the kind of person who could live like that, not just rich in money, but rich in wisdom, purpose, and discipline. That desire lit something in me that changed everything. It wasn't just about money anymore. It became about freedom, about becoming a better man, about one day giving my children something better than what I had. That was the bigger why. And once I tapped into that, the excuses started to disappear. I didn't need someone to constantly motivate me. The vision pulled me. It reminded me why I should make that extra phone call, finish that presentation, read another book, or keep going when nothing was working. See, people often say, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. But in many cases, the issue isn't the lack of options, it's the lack of a reason that's strong enough to cut through the clutter. When your reason is big, your energy changes. You stop getting distracted by petty things. You stop wasting time on what doesn't matter. You start noticing opportunities you used to walk right past. It's like your radar tunes in differently. Think about it. When someone decides they're going to run a marathon, and they've got a compelling reason, maybe they want to raise money for a cause or prove to themselves they can do something hard, their whole world starts to align around that decision. They wake up earlier, eat better, study running strategies, buy the right gear, hang around other runners. It all begins to fall into place because the why is driving every detail. It works the same way with wealth. If your why is just to impress people or avoid discomfort, you'll find it hard to stay consistent when it gets tough. But if your why is to create freedom for your family, to break a generational cycle, to build a legacy that outlives you, now you've got something that can withstand pressure. That's what clarity of purpose does. It transforms confusion into conviction. You don't have to have all the answers to get started, but you do need to ask yourself the right question. Why does building wealth matter to me? Don't stop at the first answer. Dig deeper. Ask it again. Write down what you find. Revisit it often. When your purpose is vague, you'll drift. But when it's vivid, you'll move even on the hard days. Purpose sharpens your thinking. It gives weight to your decisions. It turns hard work into meaningful effort. And over time, it transforms ordinary people into extraordinary creators of wealth, value, and influence. So, if you're looking for the path, don't start with the plan, start with the reason. The stronger the why, the clearer the how. I've come to understand that the answers most people are looking for don't live out there in the chaos of the world. They live inside, waiting to be heard. But here's the problem. We've grown uncomfortable with silence. We surround ourselves with noise, with endless motion, and with distraction disguised as productivity. If you want clarity, real clarity, the kind that directs your future and transforms your finances, you've got to step away from the noise and step into solitude. It's not popular advice. Most people are looking for the next tactic, the next hustle, the next shortcut. But what they really need is to pause, to be still. Because without reflection, you might climb the ladder only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall. Clarity doesn't come when you're running on autopilot. It comes when you stop long enough to ask, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is this getting me closer to where I want to be? I remember early in my career, I hit a wall. I was working hard, keeping busy, running from meeting to meeting, and yet nothing seemed to move. The days blurred. The results were average. I was producing, but I wasn't progressing. And then someone said to me, when was the last time you stopped to think? Not to plan, not to react to think. I couldn't answer. I had become so addicted to activity that I'd forgotten to evaluate. So I took one afternoon off, just me, a notebook, and some quiet time. That one afternoon revealed more about my direction or lack of it than months of hustle ever had. It's in those quiet hours that you can hear what matters. You can ask better questions. You can journal honestly, not for performance, but for clarity. Write down your thoughts. Don't filter them. See what keeps showing up. Look for patterns in your frustrations and your dreams. Track where your energy goes and what leaves you drained. This is not idle reflection. This is purposeful solitude. It is the ground where vision takes root. Most people avoid this practice because it feels unproductive. Sitting still doesn't look like wealth building. But let me tell you something it is. Because decisions made in confusion cost more than time. They cost opportunity. They lead to wrong investments, wasted years, and burned out effort. But decisions made from clarity, they multiply your effort. They make the hard work worthwhile. You want to know how wealthy people think? They schedule solitude like others, schedule appointments. They don't just react, they reflect. They carve out space to review, to ask, to write, and to plan. Because they know clarity is not accidental, it's cultivated. You got to go after it. Solitude doesn't mean isolation. It means focused separation time away from noise, opinions, and pressure. Some of the most successful people I've met take walks without their phones, journal every morning before the world wakes up, or spend a quiet hour every Sunday planning their week. It's in that space that they find insight that others miss because they're too busy scrolling, reacting, or complaining. If your life feels scattered, if your mind feels cloudy, don't look for something new to do. Step back instead. Get quiet. Take a long walk. Sit with a notebook. Ask better questions. What do I really want? What matters most right now? What am I avoiding? What should I stop doing? What's the next courageous step? You don't need another tool, another hack, or another voice yelling over the others. What you need is space, time to listen to your own thoughts. Because in that silence, something amazing happens. Your values rise to the surface. Your priorities become obvious. Your next move becomes simple, even if it's not easy. So if you're serious about wealth, not just financial wealth, but wealth and peace, focus and purpose, then make time for solitude. Give your mind room to breathe. Give your spirit time to speak. Because clarity doesn't come in chaos, it comes in silence. I've always believed that one of the most powerful words in the vocabulary of a wealthy thinker is the word no. Not because they're rigid, not because they're stubborn, but because they're clear. Clarity, real clarity, gives you the ability to discern. And with discernment comes the wisdom to eliminate. See, it's not just about knowing what to go after, it's about knowing what to walk away from. Because for every yes you say, there's an invisible no that comes along with it. And the poor thinker, the distracted thinker, is always saying yes to everything and yet wondering why nothing important gets done. Now let's get something straight. Saying no doesn't mean being negative. It means being strategic. It means guarding your time, your energy, your money, and your focus like they are precious assets, because they are. I remember when I first started understanding the value of clarity, I was overwhelmed. So many opportunities, so many voices, so many demands. It felt like everything was urgent. And then someone shared this with me. If you chase two rabbits, both will escape. That was a turning point. I had to learn how to say no, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Clarity acts like a filter. Once you know where you're going, anything that doesn't take you closer becomes noise. And noise must be silenced if you're serious about progress. So here's a question I began to ask myself before agreeing to anything. Does this move me forward or slow me down? If the answer was hesitation, I knew it wasn't right. You see, the wealthy think in terms of trade-offs. They don't just ask, can I do this? They ask, what am I giving up if I do? When I was building my business, I got invited to dozens of events, parties, meetings, important gatherings, and I learned that every yes I said to those things was a no to reading, studying, planning, building the things that really mattered. So I made a rule, if it doesn't move the needle, I don't do it. That didn't always make me popular, but it made me effective. And effectiveness is what builds wealth, not popularity. You want to know how to identify what to say no to? Start with your goals. If you've written your vision clearly, not in vague hopes, but in solid numbers and deadlines, then everything else becomes easier to sort. Is this task aligned with the top 20% of my goals that create 80% of my results? If not, say no. Is this person pulling me forward or dragging me sideways? Say no. Is this habit moving me toward my freedom or trapping me in cycles of escape? Say no, and don't apologize for it. People with unclear goals often become people pleasers. They say yes out of guilt, out of fear, or out of indecision. But wealthy thinkers understand something deeper. Saying no to distractions is saying yes to destiny. Every no to nonsense is a yes to significance. Every no to chaos is a yes to clarity. Every no to comfort is a yes to growth. Let me tell you something else. The more success you build, the more opportunities you'll have to say no to. As your capacity expands, so do your distractions. You'll have to protect your time even more fiercely. And here's the irony. The better you get, the more people will try to borrow your time, your brain, your energy. You must choose carefully. You must guard deliberately. So here's a practical exercise I started doing every Sunday evening. I'd write down the top 3 outcomes I needed to produce for the week. Then I'd list everything that was on my schedule and ask myself, what here doesn't support those outcomes? And then I'd eliminate, cancel, delegate, defer, or decline. That simple review saved me thousands of wasted hours and helped me build a life I didn't need a vacation from. Remember this, time is not the main asset, clarity is. Time without clarity is wasted. Time with clarity becomes wealth. So if you want to rise, if you want to build something that matters, if you want to create freedom, you've got to learn the art of saying no, not as rejection, but as redirection. Because the life you want isn't built by what you add, it's built by what you eliminate. I've often said you can't start the next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the last one. And yet, so many people are living in their past, not just remembering it, but living in it. Every decision filtered through what went wrong, every opportunity measured by what didn't work before, every new day shadowed by old pain, missed chances, or past failure. But let me tell you something, you are not your past. You are not your mistakes, and you certainly are not the balance in your bank account from 5 years ago. What matters most is what you decide from here. See, the problem with letting your past become your identity is that it becomes your prison. And prisons don't require bars, they're built in the mind. A failed business, a broken relationship, a childhood full of limitation, none of that defines who you are unless you choose to let it. Clarity begins when you understand that your history is a classroom, not a blueprint. Learn the lesson, yes, but then move forward and build something new. I remember a young man who came up to me after a seminar. He said, I want to build wealth, but I come from a family that never had anything. Everyone around me lives paycheck to paycheck. I feel like I'm trapped in that same cycle. And I asked him, what if that story you've inherited isn't yours to keep? See, we often adopt the beliefs of the environment we came from, not realizing they were never ours to begin with. Maybe your parents believed money was evil. Maybe you were taught to survive, not to grow. Maybe every risk you saw ended in failure. But let me ask you, must you repeat the pattern or can you break it? It takes intention to rewrite the story. Because without intention, history becomes destiny. But with clarity, with purpose, with the decision to think differently, speak differently, and act differently, the past loses its grip on your future. It no longer dictates your possibilities. You've got to start seeing yourself through the lens of potential, not pain. Stop calling yourself by the name of your failure. You're not broke, you're rebuilding. You're not lazy, you're learning how to focus. You're not stupid with money, you're becoming financially educated. And yes, it's a process, but progress only happens when identity shifts. Let me share something personal. When I was younger, I wasn't raised with a wealth mindset. I had to learn it. I had to unlearn a lot of ideas about money, about effort, about what I thought I could or couldn't do. There were moments I wanted to quit, not because the task was too hard, but because the voice in my head kept saying, this isn't who you are. But clarity silences that voice. I decided to ask a better question. Who do I want to become? And I began acting from that future version of me, not the old one. And here's something else I discovered. People who tie their identity to the past will sabotage the future. Why? Because the mind always seeks to prove itself right. So if you believe you're not good with money, you'll spend like someone who confirms that belief. If you believe you don't deserve wealth, you'll find ways to give it away or waste it. But when you begin to shift your identity, everything changes, your choices, your environment, your habits, and eventually your results. So here's a question to ask yourself in solitude. Am I making decisions as the person I've been or the person I want to become? Because that answer reveals your level of clarity. And without clarity, we default to patterns, and most of our patterns come from the past. You want to build wealth? Then start seeing yourself as a builder. Not as a victim, not as a mistake, not as a product of your environment, but as someone with vision, discipline, and the ability to create. That shift in identity is where momentum begins. That's where clarity lives. And when you change the way you see yourself, you change the way you spend, save, learn, and lead. Because wealth doesn't start with money, it starts with mindset. And mindset starts with identity. So break the chain. Write a new story. Not because your past didn't happen, but because your future deserves a better author. I want you to think about the times you've seen someone get a big raise, win a lottery, or receive a sudden windfall. What happens to that money? Often, it disappears faster than it arrived. A raise without the right habits is like pouring water into a bucket full of holes that just slips through your fingers. You may earn more, but if your habits aren't disciplined, you won't build wealth. This is a truth many overlook. Your habits have far more power to build financial security than the size of your paycheck. I remember a period in my own life when I started earning a bit more. I thought, now I can finally enjoy life. But without a plan or good habits, that extra income soon turned into extra spending. It was frustrating to realize that my financial situation hadn't improved despite the higher earnings. That's when I understood that it's not about how much money you bring in, but what you do with it daily. The key to building lasting wealth lies in your habits. These aren't flashy actions, they're simple, consistent choices. For example, tracking your expenses every day might sound tedious, but it's the foundation of financial clarity. When you know exactly where your money is going, you make smarter choices. Reading daily, whether it's books, articles, or financial advice, expands your knowledge and sharpens your decision-making. Practicing patience, especially in investing, lets the power of compound growth work its magic over time. Habits create momentum. Just like a snowball rolling down a hill, small good habits grow larger and faster over time. And this momentum leads to financial independence overnight, but steadily. The power of compounding doesn't only apply to money, it applies to your behaviors, your mindset, your knowledge. I've seen people with modest incomes transform their finances simply by being consistent with these habits. It's about doing the right things daily, not chasing quick fixes or bigger paychecks without a plan. A disciplined approach will turn your income into lasting wealth. So, don't wait for a raise or the perfect financial opportunity to start building your future. Start with the right habits to day track your spending, commit to learning, and be patient with your progress. These habits will compound faster than any paycheck ever could, and they'll carry you toward true financial freedom. Because at the end of the day, it's not your income that defines your wealth, but your habits that determine your financial destiny. Clarity without action is one of the most dangerous traps we can fall into. It feels good to write down your goals, to map out your dreams with precision, and to imagine the life you want. But if you stop there, if you don't follow through with deliberate action, those goals are nothing more than fantasies, illusions that keep you stuck in the same place. I've seen many people get caught in this cycle. They spend more time planning than doing, more time dreaming than executing, and in the end, nothing changes. I remember early on in my journey, I was guilty of this myself. I would carefully write down what I wanted, to earn more, to live better, to be someone different. But I would hesitate when it came to taking that first step. Fear, doubt, and hesitation whispered, "Wait until you're ready. Wait for the perfect time." The result was years of waiting and very little progress. Then I realized something critical. Clarity is not power unless it drives action. Without action, clarity is just an intellectual exercise, a daydream that feels productive but leads nowhere. Taking one deliberate step forward, no matter how small, can change everything. It breaks the inertia, builds momentum, and creates confidence. It turns your goals from vague ideas into tangible progress. Wealthy people know this deeply. They don't just plan and hope. They act decisively on what they know. It's not about giant leaps every day, but consistent steps in the right direction that add up over time. The power of action rooted in clarity lies in its ability to teach you. Each step, reveals new lessons, new adjustments, and new opportunities you never saw from simply planning. When you act, you start to understand what works, what doesn't, and how to navigate obstacles. This learning loop is what transforms your vision from a wish into a reality. I urge you to ask yourself, are you stuck in planning mode? Are you living in a world of great intentions but no forward motion? The truth is, the road to wealth isn't paved with intentions, it's paved with action. You must move, even if the path isn't fully clear, because clarity without action is just delusion, and delusion keeps you exactly where you are. So today, commit to taking that first step. Don't wait for certainty or the perfect plan. Move forward with purpose, adjust as you go, and watch your clarity turn into real progress. Remember, action in clarity is worth more than 1,000 dreams left unpursued.